Let's talk about the future of framing, right? So even like we made a video the other day about California corners and ladder blocking and just framing is evolving. And you have these figures on who's the guy on YouTube that everybody likes to talk about?
Risinger?
Risinger, yeah. Or even like who are the Builder Brothers out in Utah? Anyway, like it seems like there's a desire to improve, to better. The stereotypes of 80s, 90s framers is not true of today. Like, what do y'all see is happening in framing moving forward? Anything?
I think the awareness of
Insulation,
insulation,
Air
waterproofing,
brakes.
like how
What are air brakes?
like air braking, like what do they call it? Draft.
yeah.
It's where you're trying to keep that air outside from being inside, right? So like California corners, that's a big step in that direction, right? Making sure your corners are tight. Ladder blocking is another big step.
And that's not California corners and ladder blocking is not new.
No,
It's
they've
been around,
forever.
but we all switched. But it kind of got switched to where you did things like you were stacking, doing it different with like 3 studs instead of 1. But so because it was better for sheetrock. But now we've switched back to it because of insulation purposes. Everybody's wanting to insulate more, not have any air gaps anywhere.
I mean, it's structural stuff. Like an actual return is probably stronger in your wall, but you're also losing a lot of R value because you're adding 2 more studs where they technically don't need to be, right? So you're losing a lot, and you don't have that thermal break at that point. So there's ladder blocks in California corners. I try to do them all the time on exterior walls. Interior walls, I'm probably going to go right back to returns just because I like the fact that my sheetrock
Is better.
is solid in that corner.
Yes.
Whether it's kids' rooms, all that stuff. Like I want to make sure it's as solid as possible where it needs it, right? But exterior, you want that insulation to try to, especially here in Texas, you got to keep the heat out.
Mm-hmm.
Like if your AC's running, you're not helping anything.
And I think that, and then I think at least on our end, what me and Tommy and I, is really understanding how the water, like
Liquid flashing. We're starting to liquid
like
flash.
always
siding
waterproofing out, just waterproof. Run the right counter flashings, run the right Z flashings, making sure there's kick out flashing. That's probably our biggest.
Sloping your seals.
Yeah, sloping, all those things. So I'd say it's more exterior that we're kind of down. Now I kind of go in phases of learning. It's usually where we get like, I run into problems and then I'm like, hey, how do we solve that? How do we, we had a window leak. We got into a big mess on a window leak. Well, then it was like, hey, how can we solve this? How can we make sure we don't have this again? And then we've started Z flashing and taping and
How long has the stretch tape been around? The zip stretch tape.
I don't know, what, a couple years?
I don't know how long exactly it's been around because like it started with like Tyvek. Tyvek had that stretch tape for a while.
Like 4 to flash stuff or something.
They've had it out for a while, but everybody now is like really. I say everybody you can go to pilot. I don't know if that's everybody because there's a lot of people that don't do it, but a lot of higher end homes, especially, but even if you're high end or not, we're doing it now. It's just flashing and waterproofing because that's the number one lawsuit thing is water damage, and so it's like you can spend an extra $1,000 for extra back like the stretch tape, the silicone, the good tape. And it says the whole other thing. You can go down you can go down a rabbit trail of taping. Zip tape's the best that we have found, and so, but I've gotten to where we don't, like Tommy and I don't put any the zip wall system or true Tyvek. That was it. Was it Home Guard?
Yeah, if you're Home Guard or any of that other stuff,
the woven fabrics
does absolutely nothing.
Yeah, it's just junk. Water go, So I prefer the zip the best. But
zip is nice because, but depending on how long the house is going to sit in that condition, right? If it's a spec house and you're throwing it up and it's going to have siding on it within a week of being framed, then Tyvek's probably fine because it's not sitting there getting beat on. The wind's not bleaching it, all that stuff. Like it's fine. Tape sticks really good to it. It actually seals, right? As long as it's installed correctly, it's going to do its job. But if it's a big, massive, custom home that's probably going to be open, or if it's a rock house,
Yeah.
zip is definitely the way to go, because even when they penetrate for all their, their rock clips, what do they call them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
Mason guides. Brick ties.
Brick ties. Yeah.
I mean, they're going to put a nail all over the place and that stuff. And that, if you think about Tyvek, it's having all these penetration now. Did they use cap nails on any of that stuff?
Yep.
Mm-mm. Yeah. So
your OSB's getting wet in those points, and rock is not waterproof. It leaks water. That's why they have wick holes at the bottom.
Yeah.
That's what I like about the customers we work for. They're willing to spend the extra to go the extra mile to do some of these waterproofing things.
No, because I mean, it's not just us that are having to come back and fix it. It's the builder that's having to.
It's everybody. And then if
we've got good builders that actually take our inputs. Be like,
seriously.
Hey, that's a good idea. Let's do that. It may cost a little more front end, but let's do that. It's going to save us, right?
Yeah.
Give the customer a better home, everything else.
And I think that like the awareness of like with the internet and things, the awareness when a customer asks us a question, you have to assume that they probably already got the answer.
Oh yeah, they've been looking at YouTube.
Yeah, so and some of the stuff's on YouTube is great, and some of it you're just like it's not applicable to this situation, but you have to really pay attention. And it really, what it's all done is you're having to. Used to, it was very, what would you call it? Cowboyish. Just we're just out there, just
shoot from the hip,
just going. Now we're having to really pay attention, especially too. We're getting into more high end jobs where
we've talked about the professionalism of the trade.
Yes,
like you guys are professionals.
Yeah, there's nobody shirtless out there at my job.
Yes.
Can you not be a shirtless framer and still be a professional?
You can, but I mean,
the
have the mustache too.
Yes. But I think that especially our jobs that we're on now, we're being held like we either have engineers, architects, and then also we have to really pay attention to how we're in specs, how we're doing it, how we're installing it. We're doing it to their specs because it's good or bad. You're being held to all that. Like they're going to be able to walk you back to that if something went wrong. Yeah. They're going to hold you to that stuff. So I think on some aspects it's good because it's causing the industry to move towards that, and sometimes it's like
overkill.
Yes.
Well, I mean, I watched some of the Rise in Your videos, and he's doing 2 foot on center studs, and his headers, like he doesn't want to put his headers here because he loses insulation value, so he's like not even putting headers anywhere, which is fine. But if you want to spend the extra money to put a truss in every header, then that's fine, right? If you want to do that, right? But that's probably not for everyone, right?
Right.
Well, that's probably the biggest thing is like in YouTube, people are coming to why are we not doing it this way? Because
that's a $7 million house.
Exactly.
Yeah,
like
you have to tell you that, right?
Yeah, you have to like, hey, we're working on a $500,000 or $700,000 house. You're watching videos of stuff on like you said, $7 million house, so you can spend these extra. You can go these different extra lengths of doing things.
It's a different game book.
Yes.
Yeah. Even in our framing, though, there's different aspects as far as like levels of homes, right? Like, and it's not necessarily what we want to do. Like, we'd love to give everybody the highest possible job, right? But a lot of times constraints is the budget, or
it's not like I wouldn't say it's like the craftsmanship essay would be like in the tank, but just different aspects of homes, prices of homes depend on the types of materials you can use, different things.
I mean, simple thing is it's like rafters, 2 foot on center, 16s, right? That's just that alone cuts your rafter cost in what, 20%?
Yes, which 2 foot's allowed. It's all in code. It's all good. But hey, on higher end homes, you usually go 16 centers and you usually go 5/8 decking, if not 3/4 inch decking.
So I mean, that's different. Like, you can add a lot of things. Like, we'd love to give everybody a 16 on center house with 5/8 decking, 3/4 decking. That's going to give it the flattest roof possible. That's going to make everything super strong. You're not going to see any kind of waves in any of that stuff. But a lot of times that's not in the budget, right?
Mm-hmm.
So 2 foot on center is plenty. Like, there's nothing wrong with 2 foot on center.
With 7/16 decking.
7/16 decking. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not. If you're putting shingles on a house, it doesn't matter at that point, right? But if you're putting tile on that thing, you need to go to 16 on center, and you need to upgrade your decking because you're going to see the repercussions of cutting that cost, especially when you're putting a high dollar tile roof on it.
Yes.
Like that's not somewhere you want to skimp on. Is that in that area?
You're gonna end up buying more tile.
Yes.
Or maybe some sheetrock and stuff after the tile came through.
That's funny.
Yes.
I don't remember what the actual number is, but that tile was heavy.
It's heavy, very heavy. Normally they always upsize it to like 2x8 rafters, don't they?
Normally, yes,
Yeah,
at least
it's
2
always-
eighths, and sometimes double purlins. And
How old is LVLs? How long have LVLs and laminated beams been around?
That's a question. I don't
know how long.
land beams I know of
Land
in
beams
the
around for
80s.
a long time.
I mean a long time. LVLs I don't know. I went to
This is a 31-foot span, and there's 4 24-inch LVLs. And so you were telling me like each one is about 600 pounds, so 2,400 pounds. Like 10 years ago, 20 years ago, how accessible would that have been?
That'd have been a land beam.
What's the difference between an LVL and a land beam?
We could have put the land beam up there with the way we did it.
Because
it had a crane.
You'd have to have a crane to set it up there.
Right.
Because the land beam would have been 7.5 wide by 24 inches tall.
Right.
And it would have weighed. How much would that land beam weigh?
I don't know what it weighed, but
1,500 pounds?
But
yeah,
what's the difference? A land beam and an LVL? It's just
like
an
a can,
LVL
like a
is the same, but just smaller, right?
No. Laminated veneer lumber, right? It's just pressed together.
it's plywood.
Yeah.
Like it's like
Structural
a
plywood.
it's like a structural plywood glued pressed.
Ah.
Land beam is a 2x material that has just been glued
And pressed
stacked.
together.
And-
Yeah.
But they see like a land beam will come cambered with pre-cambered on it, and so then you're trying to like
You got to make sure you load it enough to get the camera out of it for it to be straight.
yes, and so like LVLs are made they're straight, so then it deflects. But there's a formula, they
that's
like a beam like this with what tolerance is 3/4 of an inch I think is it will sag 3/4 of an inch before it's considered if it goes an inch it may be like I don't know the exact numbers, but there's always a number. Hey, it can sag 3/4 and it's not considered filling.
Right.
So your deflection rate.
Yeah, 3/4 deflection, yeah.
But I like LVLs. It's just easier. It's number one, man. It's not as backbreaking, and then the camber thing. Like you're not trying to.
We've got builders that want land beams, and we try to talk them out of trying. They just don't trust LVL, so it's just it's a pick your poison kind of thing, right? So
Yeah, and they're not. It's just.
it's not like there's anything wrong with land
No.
beams. Like we use them both all the time. Like those arch ones, those are all land beams. It's just I prefer LVLs because they're easier to handle. You don't have to worry about the preload to it, right? 'Cause like you're trying to put your rafters up there, and they're all the same. For some reason, these middle two aren't fitting right.
It's got a camber.
It's the camber in the middle, right? We got to make sure we leave that kind of open-ish, or not change them so it will pinch down the level eventually, right? Once it loads.
Well, and if you've got certain architects or owners, they'll want you can get they're called clear land beams, and there's no joints in them, but you'll see the stacks like there'll be a joint, but they're really good. They'll stain them.
Oh yeah.
There's applications for them. Like, hey, if we're going to leave them exposed, you do it. But LVLs, if you're just wrapping them, it's so much, or they're going to be concealed.
So with barn doors, the last 10 years exploding in popularity, and there's now more mixed with metal and wood construction framing together. You guys see any creativity, like, oh, what could be done here, or container homes, or I mean, I don't know, just random questions with future of framing.
Depends on the barn door. We did one in Brownwood that what did Steve Browder say? It cost double.
Yeah, I think so, or pretty close to it.
But that was kind of an overthinking issue, I think, on everybody's part on that one, because they ran everything like it was going to be sheathed metal barn, and then we were just going to put walls inside. And then he said, well, we need to put plywood in there too. So then we had to put plywood and shove it in there because he didn't want the insulation to be on the outside wall. So it was a big kind of fiasco thing, and not really knowing what they wanted and changing it and everything
The
else.
barn door thing is people misconception. People think the barn door is going to be cheaper, and it's only cheaper if you do like just a square box.
If you live in a barn.
Yes,
Yeah,
if it's a
but if
barn.
you turn it into a home, it's no longer a barn.
And it becomes.
I mean, you might save you get your nice big open span for probably less money, but you still have to frame inside of it. So
that's where I think it's equitable. If you're doing like an industrial feel and a big spans, like he said.
Yeah, like that one we did in the Clifton again. That had that huge game room that was like 40 feet. You know, that was just this open expanse area, right? Like you couldn't do to do that in lumber. It's almost impossible.
Yes.
You know, especially with the way they wanted it, pretty much impossible.
Does big span start around 40 feet in y'all's mind?
40 feet's pretty much max on 2-foot LVLs, right?
No, I think it's like 36. 36 feet.
Over 36 feet,
it's got to go to steel.
It's got to go to steel. So at that point, you're pushing limits.
And that's really on a. I mean, like, what was that one you're doing right now in Zephyr? How far is it?
36.
It is that. It is theirs. Yeah. Well, it really depends on. There's a whole lot of factors depending on when you got to go to steel.
Math.
Lots of math. But I think it's like. I think people they think it's going to be, but
well, barn doors, container home, same way. Like if you're going to do a container home and actually finish it and it looks like a container, yes, you probably save some money because you just took the foundation out of it, right? Like you don't have to worry about the foundation. And if you're going to leave it as a container, you don't have any siding in it, you don't have any exterior finish anymore, right? So that's done. But you got to like putting a window in a container, how much harder that is than just throwing it on a wood wall.
Yeah.
Like you've got to cut the hole, and then you've got to re-weld this frame back into it. So you can put some wood in there so you can attach your window, right? So there's a lot that goes to it. Like my buddy did one in Eastland, and I helped him put a roof on it, and I would not recommend doing that.
How big of a home did it end up being?
It was 6 containers put in a U area. And you had a big open expanse in the middle, so we did trusses over the center. But I think it was like 3,200 total. It's a pretty big home, right? But he's got one big living room, and then every room under that is tiny because it's container size, right?
Yeah.
So
10 foot.
Yeah.
Or 8, was it 8 feet?
9?
Well, they're the high cubes, so they're 9.2-ish.
Oh, okay.
9 something inside.
Yeah.
I mean, 9-foot ceiling's fine, but you still got to sheetrock the ceiling, so you still got to drop it a little bit to put your insulation and your 2x material in there to do your sheetrock. So by the time you're done, you're under 9 feet, I'm pretty sure. So it's everybody can do it.
It's all narrative.
Like, yeah, it's all what you think. Like he's dead set on that because he's a welder, right? He could do a lot of that stuff himself, right? So it's the look that you're going for is what's going to make something make sense to you, right?
And your skill set. It's like
if you're DIY it or if you're and then also too, like when you're doing a barn dough and you're just doing like walls and 10 sheets on top, no overhangs, that saves a lot. And you're not going to sheet underneath the porches. That's when barn doughs become cheaper because it's just tin, I-beam, and concrete. All of a sudden your porches are super cheap. But now it's becoming very popular. Well, I want to cover all it because it does look better. Cover it all with metal and all, and it becomes way more cost more. But then you get people that are like, well, less maintenance. Okay, then you're back down to you got big spans, or I want less maintenance. Well, okay, those are factors to go down those paths. But if it's for cost, there's no. I get into where there's not really much cost difference anymore.
No, I don't think so.
So
well, especially when you do a barn dough and they're wanting to 1x6 their ceiling, right? So now you got to lave it, which is not easy, and then you got to go in there and you got to put all the 1x6 on it. You got to redo all this stuff. So a lot of times it's just a wash on most things,
if not just a hair more at times. So.